Good morning. First of all, I just wanted to say thank you for having us in to speak to you this morning. It's a real privilege to be invited into places that we have never been before and just see all of the different ways that churches around New Zealand are worshipping and gathering together. Is such a privilege. Um, yeah. So, my name's Naomi Johnston. I'm be speaking on behalf of our family today. Glenn is with me, and our daughter Mina's out in the little room over there. We first travelled to Europe to live 4 years ago, four and a bit years ago, and we had a plan of what we hoped to achieve there, and none of it happened. So, I'll just start off with that caveat. Uh, I think there are always projects that people sign up for when they get into missions. There are ideas of what they want to achieve, and then there's what actually happens. And this happens, I think, in normal life as well, and in ministry here in New Zealand. I think people sign up to ministry and it just never ends up the way they expected. But both of those things, the idea and what actually happens, are both from God. So I'll be sharing a little about our journey through from the idea to actually what happened. So the first country that I'm going to be talking about a few countries, but the first country I want to talk about is Ukraine. So this was never part of the plan. When we moved over, we moved into Budapest, Hungary, and we were aiming to work, my husband in construction and helping with some of the projects in the area, and I was hired as a photographer and videographer for the whole region of Europe and the Middle East. So my job was to go into countries and photograph and video what the teams were doing in those countries. Uh, let's say 2 months after we got there into Budapest, we realised that the projects that Glenn had been recruited for were no longer going to happen. And my husband is a hardworking man and needs manual labor. Like there's some other stuff he can do as well, but like a good season of manual labor is what keeps him happy. And so we were really unsure of what it is we were there to do and how Glenn was going to adapt and fit this process. And 6 months after we moved, the war started in Ukraine, and we didn't understand what they had to do with us. But 2 days after the war started, my boss called me up and he said, "Would you come with me into Ukraine with your camera?" And I was like, "Of course, like that's what I'm here to do. I would love to do that." And so this started a long project where we delivered food into Ukraine. So we're going to move along some of these images here. This is the first image from our first trip into Ukraine. I'm wearing the pink beanie there. And the girl with me, her story is a little complicated. She is a Ukrainian woman, but she married an American missionary. So when the call came to extract all the internationals from Ukraine about 2 weeks before the war started, she was forced to also extract with her husband. And it felt almost like a betrayal of her people that she was leaving this country right when they needed her the most. And so she was in the first van load of supplies. So there was my boss and me and this lovely lady, and this is her hopping out of the car and being back on Ukrainian soil for the first time in 2 weeks, right after the war had started. And so this is our first supply of goods that we bought in. Let's move along to the next. One of the most, I think, surprising things for me is how this set of refugees looked a lot like people I would grow up with. So, in a lot of other circumstances, refugees look very different from me. But in this circumstance, these refugees looked like they could be my little sisters or my cousins. And they basically packed their supplies, mostly people in the east, and they just moved west. And so this is an example of a family that probably drove from the east. When we drove into Ukraine, we noticed a pile of cars on either side of the road. And what had been happening is people were driving over, and because their cars would not be European Union approved, they just dumped their cars on the side of the road and walked across, hoping that there would be someone there to pick them up. This is an example of a little Ukrainian village right on the border there. This was, I don't know, it just looks so ordinary with the sky satellites, but also very old, very dated, quite a poor area. Yeah, cool, let's move. So this was, we initially started just piling whatever we could into the back of the cars and taking them across. But after a little while, we started to get an idea of what exactly people needed and supplying much larger numbers of these things. So this is an example of just a pile of water and that we were taking over. Water became in scarce supply for a bit. This is my husband, Glenn, packing one of the vans. So eventually, Glenn became the project manager of this project because he had no other jobs on the go. And if he was not available to do this, we wouldn't have been able to run the project for as long as we did because everyone else had a job and a reason for being there, and Glenn did not. And so he was able to pick up this role and he hosted short-term work teams who all came over to drive the stuff across the border in little vans. The reason we didn't use bigger trucks is because they were being taken for other uses once they got into Ukraine. So we made the decision to buy vans and take the food in a convoy of vans instead. They were less likely to get chosen. Yes, so this is another look at some of the supplies. We stored them over the border in Ukraine in buildings that were hopefully very nondescript. And anytime I took a photo of where the food ended up, I wasn't allowed to show any sort of telltale signs of where this warehouse was. Because food was becoming in short supply right at the start and through the middle of that whole, in the first year or so of the war, we had to be very protective of where we kept that food in order for it not to be hijacked. This is an example of one of the work teams that came to help Glenn transport stuff across the border. So we have 2 American men, an Australian woman and a Kiwi woman who all flew at a moment's notice. They raised a bunch of support, or they were benefactors themselves, and they just dropped everything, came over for 2 weeks and drove food across the border, staying at a little border house in Hungary. So they would drop the food off, come back just over the border and sleep the night before getting another load of food and doing the same thing again. This is the border house that they were staying at. So very small. Inside was basic, I would say, very basic. And sometimes the power was not working or the hot water was not working. So Glenn made a number of small changes in order to keep this house comfortable. How long did we have that for? About a year. Yeah, we rented this building off a local for about a year in order to host driving teams. After a while, we started to notice that in the community in Ukraine, the food distribution was shared out through the pastors or the reverends or the priests of a certain village. So in order to stop food being taken and distributed in bad and nefarious ways, they would get given to the priests or the reverends, and those people would distribute it to the community, to the people who needed it. So if the priest or the reverend decided that things were getting too dangerous and they left with their family, the people in that village had to go to the next village, sometimes by foot, in order to get access to food. So what we decided to do was put together pastors' boxes of supplied food that would keep them safe so that they didn't feel like at a drop of a hat they needed to leave if something got really bad. And so we started to do this, and we delivered to every pastor or reverend in the area that we were responsible for. That project was completed. But we did this while keeping to this power grid structure. So on the right-hand side there, the red numbers are the hours that we would be without power, and the green is the hours we would have power. And sometimes this was not correct. So you could plan for this, but maybe it wouldn't work out that way. So the teams really did have a big challenge ahead of them in trying to work through this. but we completed that project. This is an example of winter. This is a photo I took in November, right on the edge of the area that we were working in. So this was up in the mountain range that separated the area we were working in Ukraine with the rest of Ukraine. And so this is the type of weather that some of the soldiers were having to live through over out on the east as well. So that's why I took this photo, because I think when we think of winter, we think sort of what's happening outside. But I just wanted to show people that this is the situation that people were having to deal with no power and short food supplies. This is an example of me camouflaged so that no one could spot me doing my job there. And there's my husband and the boss who set up the whole job. He's responsible for starting this whole project within 2 days. So I always like to show a photo of him to pay him a bit of respect. Yeah, this was an insane trip. This was the only trip that Glenn and myself did together because we feel responsible for our daughter, and so we would always do these trips separately. And even on this trip, we always stayed in separate cars just in case. All right. Obviously, you can talk to us about any more details of that project if you'd like to afterwards. So I'm going to move ahead to Hungary. So this is the country that we chose to live in and to work out of. We felt a calling to Eastern Europe, but we also needed to be able to travel easily between other countries. And so Hungary was a very good choice for this. Some of the projects that Glenn picked up after the war, sort of the funding for the war got quite short. In fact, it ended very quickly. We started to do things like renovation work on a ministry centre that the organisation owns in Hungary. And so the previous pictures were the before. That's sort of how this building looked when Glenn started the project. And then the next pictures are how Glenn finished it. And this was with no prior renovation experience. So it was a very steep learning curve. But I think he did a fantastic job. And this is the place where we now host missionaries who are traveling through and also visiting team members. Lovely. All right. So speaking of visiting team members, we have Jen here who comes quite regularly into Hungary to work at the summer English camps. This is also what we were involved in at the start of our ministry there. So every summer we host 3 English camps in order to teach Hungarian children English, which gives them more access to jobs later on. And we have a team of about 3 or 4 who live in Hungary, who write the curriculum every year and who are involved in this. But we also recruit about 10 to 12 international people to come in and implement the curriculum. So when we say summer English camp, it's less fun than you would imagine. There's a bit more classroom work, but this is how the Hungarians do summer camps. There's usually learning involved of a strict nature. So our camp is actually quite easygoing comparative to other camps. This is an example of a traditional breakfast that we would eat in the cafeteria. Some of us would eat in the cafeteria, and some of us would walk up to the local supermarket and get supplies. But we got very used to this form of breakfast after a few years there. I can't say we implemented it at our house, but and this is a photo of Jen that I thought I would include. I didn't ask permission, so sorry. This is on sports day, so we split all of the camp into 4 different teams, and they have to hoot and holler their way around different sports activities. And what's this? Like foot baseball? There's a name for it. But basically, they play baseball but with their feet, and out in this field out the back of the school. So lots of games and activities there. And in the morning and evening, we run like a program in the big hall where we talk about the day, we share photos from the previous day, and we usually teach them a little bit about Jesus and the Bible in a more informal manner. So, yeah. I'm going to move along to Italy now. So part of my job, which was a big pull actually in going to work with this particular organization is that I was allowed to go into different countries and photograph what the other teams were doing. And I thought that would be my main kind of service to those teams. But what I realized is that my coming to their country and being with them for a week and hearing about their struggles was actually the main ministry that I did with them. So just making them feel less alone and that they were well supported by the organization that they were a part of, even if they were the only ones there. So in Italy, we run a bike shop. The man on the right is Bradley. He's the head of this team. And so what they do is, because bicycles are a main form of transportation down in Sicily, they find old bikes, or they're given old broken down bikes, and they fix them. But they do this alongside migrants who might need a bike. So they teach a migrant to fix their own bikes, and while they're teaching them this, they talk to them about Jesus. And so at the end, they've been sort of discipled, and they have a brand new bike or a well-running bike, and they're welcome to come back and get it fixed whenever they need. So this is a very big ministry to the migrants who are coming up from Africa into Sicily, and it's probably one of their first experiences of meeting a friendly face of a person who doesn't want to send them back where they came from. So it's an important ministry for them. They also host a small house church out of the bike shop where other Italians and members from their team, but also migrants, sometimes attend this church. After the church service every Sunday, they pull out these trick bikes. So if you can see, he's riding like a trike, but he has to pedal backwards in order to get the wheels to do the right thing. And he's also up about 2 meters off the ground. So it's a very hard bike to get onto, but once you're up there, it's very fascinating and it draws a lot of attention. So there's 4 or 5 of these bikes in different shapes and varieties. And so when people come up and they're interested, we then again talk to them about Jesus. So all of the ministry in Italy revolves around pulling people in and then very directly talking to them about Jesus. A lot of the migrants have not actually heard about Jesus when they arrive in Italy. Also in Italy, we host a community garden where we again teach migrants who might be interested how to grow food and keep themselves resourced and supplied, but also it gives them a very practical skill when they need to move into other countries or other cities within Europe, and they have better chances of getting work. This is one of the migrants that we have taught and discipled for about 3 years. He's had one-on-one discipling out here in the garden. I'm going to move quickly up into Estonia. I was privileged to go and visit them. It was very cold and but very exciting. So we have a seminary up there and we teach in 3 languages. So this is a Methodist seminary, I think, but it's 3 languages live. And so when someone's speaking from the front, I don't know if you can tell, but there are 3 different colors there. So there's English, Russian, and Estonian, and it's live translated by 2 people in booths at the back, in soundproof booths. And so all the students, if you speak any of those 3 languages, you'll have an earpiece in your ear, and that's how they run every class at the seminary. It's incredible. And we have 2 missionaries, Brent Weaver, I think he's from New Zealand. He's over there teaching in the seminary, and his wife, and this man here, he's part of our team. One of the coolest parts about this ministry is how old people are when they're converted. So this lady, she's in her mid-80s. She was converted 2 or 3 years ago. And it was so life-changing for her that she grabbed a little team of people the same age, and they now go and minister in rest homes. And there's a very high conversion rate right before people pass away because of the work of people like her who haven't given up on people when they pass a certain age. And a lot of these people have grown up in communism and they haven't had the chance to hear about a relationship with Jesus. So she's in a discipleship group here, learning for herself, and then she'll go out and take this to rest homes in the area. So finally, I'm going to talk about Spain. Glenn and myself have been on a journey where we initially felt called to Hungary and we did 4 years there, but we're feeling like the next season should be in Spain. And we've prayed a lot about this. But one of the main reasons is that Spain has a lot of practical work needed. And so Glenn will have a great number of uses there. And I also have access to an airport, so I can continue to do the work I'm doing. So this is a drone footage of the camp that we will be working at. This is an OMS camp. That's the organization I'm with. And they own this camp, but it was in a state of disrepair for a number of years, and then COVID did a number on it. So it hasn't had good, sustainable business for a long time. And so they need missionaries or people who are funded by themselves to come and do the work for free. So that is what Glenn's going to be doing for the next season. And this is the lovely couple who run the camp. It's just the two of them and one maintenance guy. And this camp can host 120 people. So it's a lot of work. And we really feel like we can help them out there in some way. This is Glenn looking very happy to be at work alongside a friend who comes over to do regular work from the US. We also host work teams in Spain. They can come from anywhere in the world and come over and work for a number of weeks. And part of our job will be to host work teams and people who want to come over and serve in any way. The US usually sends quite a big team of people, but we've had team numbers of all sorts. And we've started hosting summer camps there now too. So we had 2 this year in Spain, where we host a similar type of camp where we talk to them about Jesus, but it's more of a sports or leisure focus. Spanish kids do not want to go and sit in a classroom and learn a different language in their summer break. Yeah, so this is an example of some of the kids that were there this year, and they have 2 teams usually come in and run those camps as well, similar to Hungary. Yeah, so this is our daughter, Mina May. We put her straight to work. She's the one on the right-hand side. Claudia is lovely, and she does all the cooking for the camp. So she cooks for any number of people from like 20 in some cases to 120. And here's an example of some of the renovation work that's been happening on the outside of the Spanish villas. All right. So I just wanted to say thank you once again for listening to what I have to say. I had a lot to share, a few stories, but all that to say, we have loved having the support of Jen and seeing her nearly annually, except for a couple of gaps there. And yeah, we're heading to Spain. So thank you so much for getting me in to speak.
Thanks, Jen. Naomi, thank you so much for sharing your adventures that started with a little dream, that little seed, and God is blessing you so much. Caroline is going to lead us in a little song now, and I think it would be lovely just to listen to that as we reflect on what Naomi has been sharing with us and how God has been moving in Naomi and Glyn and Minna's life. So Carla, and then I'll come back and explain about our prayer time. So just rest and relax in this song. You call me out upon the waters, the great unknown, where feet may fail. And there I find you in the mystery, in oceans deep. My faith will stand, and I will call upon your name, and keep my eyes above the waves. When oceans rise, my soul will rest in your embrace, for I am yours, and you are mine. Spirit, lead me where my trust is without borders. Let me walk upon the waters wherever you would call me. Take me deeper than my feet could ever wander, and my faith will be made strong in the presence of my Savior. I will call upon your name and keep my eyes above the waves. My soul will rest in your embrace, for I am yours and you are mine. So we are coming to a time of prayer now, and we just thought we might do this a little bit differently today. There are four areas that are set up, and when Caroline and I were reflecting on this service and the reading, how wonderful that mustard seed is, and that's all that God asks of us is to have that faith as small as a mustard seed. So, we've got some areas here that you might like to sit and reflect and write a prayer. So, over here is an area where we can pray for our world. We might like to pray specifically for the work of Naomi and Glyn and OMS. Um, uh, Over there, we've got an area where we can pray for our families and our creation and our community. So there's an opportunity for you to plant some sunflower seeds if you'd like to. There's an opportunity for you to write a prayer and stick it onto the tree. And it's just a time for us to bring our prayers to God. If you would rather just sit quietly and do your own personal reflection, you should have a little booklet um, and a little packet of seeds. So the next 10 minutes is an opportunity for us to just be a little bit creative, as spring is creative. Um, you can plant as many sunflower seeds as you like, because we never know about germination that way. And then there's the little containers that you can pop them in. So yeah, that's the time. And then there are going to be four people who are going to just bring our prayers together. So about 10 minutes. It's only 20 to 4. So you've got plenty of time. Oh, you're too late. One or the other. Okay. Um, Off you go. And I'll call you back when it's time to come back and pray as a church whānau. All right. Out upon water, great unknown, feed my fire. And there I find you in the mystery, in ocean's deep, my faith will stand. And I will call upon your name and keep my eyes above the waves. When oceans rise, my soul will rest your embrace, for I am yours and you are mine. Your grace abounds in deepest waters. Your sovereign hand will be my guide. Where feet may fail and fear surrounds me, you've never failed and you won't start now. And I will call upon your name and keep my eyes above the waves. When oceans rise, my soul will rest in your embrace, for I am yours and you are mine. You are mine. Spirit, lead me where my trust is without borders. Let me walk upon the waters wherever you would call me. Take me deeper than my feet could ever wander, and my faith will be made stronger in the presence of my Savior. Spirit, lead me where my trust is without borders. Let me walk upon waters wherever you would call me. Take me deeper than my feet could ever, and my faith will be made stronger in the presence of my Savior. Spirit, lead me where my trust is without borders. Let me walk upon the waters wherever you would call me. Take me deeper than my feet could ever wander, and my faith will be made strong in the presence of my Savior. And I'm call upon you and keep my eyes above the waves. My soul will rest in your embrace, for I am yours and you are mine.
So, as we bring our prayers together, we think of God's creation and also we think about our offertory and all that we have to give back to God. Lord of all creation,